Snowflake, which actually brings up another topic which I was fascinated by this week, and that is the Snowflake sort of response to the Databricks thing that we talked about, I guess, about a month ago, with this idea of a bespoke enterprise LLM. And what was fascinating for me is when I read it, I often when I'm reading, I do a highlight and I take a note. And my very first note was, oh, this is an also ran. Clearly a response to Databricks, and it's the same thing. But what was interesting, there are two things I found really interesting about the press release blog post that they wrote doing this. First, very, very technical, very open, right? One of the big things they're hanging their hat on is that they're truly being open about this, and they're opening up their weights, their actual data, right? I mean, much, much more open than the other open AI approaches. And in this blog post went very, very technical in how they're doing this. The other thing, they're claiming that they're lowering the cost even more. From, Databricks was out there saying we can do this for 10 million. Snowflake's now saying 2 million. But probably the most interesting was that they took this 3-tiered training approach, where the first tier, or first, I'm not sure if that's what they called it, but the first pass was like general LLM training, and then 2 passes that were very, very specific to enterprise data, to enterprise needs, and focused on development. And so, I love that we're now finally seeing this shift to how we actually address enterprise issues with all of this, and contrasted to OpenAI is making a lot of enterprise stuff pushes, but I feel like all they're doing is say, hey, use our GPTs, right? Whereas this Snowflake approach looks, and the Databricks as well, but I think this is like even a step further, where it's like these are really pragmatic approaches to how an enterprise can start now truly experimenting with building out a model and building out an AI approach that they can really operationalize with their data and bring to market. And so it was a really fascinating kind of conversation to see where it's going.
Yeah, I was surprised by this as well. I thought this was going to be a Me Too approach, but then as I looked at the announcement, we talked about the mixture of experts approach with the Databricks model that recently came out, but Snowflake took this to a whole nother level. The previous mixture of experts approaches have created maybe a few experts that might be approached. Snowflake has created 128 different experts, basically model branches that will allow for doing specific tasks very well. And then so you have this core model, and then based on what you're trying to do, Snowflake will pick two of these experts to help complete your work. And then the end result is being able to access the call it 15 to 20 billion parameters that really matter for solving your problem from a model perspective, rather than the entire 400 billion or whatever it is approach that is happening in some other LLMs, where they say you need to go through all of our parameters to figure out what's going right. Snowflake is doing a very good job of focusing on the specific capabilities and functions that you're looking at, which it makes a lot of sense actually when you think about Snowflake being a very enterprise focused and very data focused and being purpose built for the data's tasks that they're trying to solve. So I think Snowflake's actually figured out how to take a bit of a lead for the moment in LLMs from an enterprise perspective in doing this.
You mean for the next 10 minutes?
Yes, for the next 10 minutes. Who knows how long that's going to last, but for I guess Snowflake for this month has figured out how to have a market leading LLM, and honestly that's as far as I can go, because honestly every couple of weeks something happens in the LLM space that is groundbreaking and new and absolutely different. But I do think that the big picture here is that the mixture of experts effort is an important one to consider from an LLM perspective, and that should be considered kind of the state of the art for 2024. And if you're not looking at that, you are probably going to be spending a lot more money on compute because you're using these bloated models that only have a single approach for working.
Yeah, so getting back to the sort of pragmatic elements of this, I think clearly this is a sign that mixture of experts, at least for right now, is going to probably be the winning approach, or certainly a prominent approach to solve this. It's also related to this whole broader movement around things like agentic AI, which is also about, how do I take these models and extend them with more authoritative data sources to reduce things like hallucinations. And I also think it's connected to this idea of finding smaller approaches. So we're not going to talk about all this because they weren't on our list, but Microsoft released their own small LLM, a very small parameter-based LLM. There's a lot of news. Apple has a new patent that they're putting stuff out in the public domain right now about their approaches, clearly going out for device-based LLM sort of activity. So I think we're seeing this trend towards now not just going for big, but how do we get this thing small and how do we get it to something that's manageable? And so I think we're seeing this evolution where people are starting to get more pragmatic most of the time.